Before I begin, I do want to acknowledge 205 years ago today, the British attacked Fort McHenry right here in Baltimore. Part of the War of 1812. We were outnumbered, but we were fighting for the same things we're fighting today. For liberty, for freedom, and against tyranny. That battle took place on the second day, September 14th. They lowered the small American flag to raise the 30 by 42 big American flag. Why? Just a sign of victory. Francis Scott Key witnessed that out on the British ship and then wrote what became the Star-Spangled Banner. That was 205 years ago today. The battles we have may be a little different, but the theme is still the same. How do we bring more freedom and liberty to this country? How do we fight tyranny? When I watched last night the Democrat debate, I was able to do that after the president spoke because it was still going. Two things that were interest to me. I never heard impeachment come up, and I never really heard them talk about the economy. The strongest economy we had in the last 50 years, and really no discussion. I think part of that reason why this economy is so strong, the Democrats didn't have that much to do with it. We passed the tax reform that made American businesses actually able to compete around the world. Not one of them would vote for it. There's some things we wanted to finish getting done, like immigration reform, but not one Democrat would vote for it. The president last night, he had a lot to talk about of the successes coming up in his third year, but he also talked about the accomplishments of that time, but also what we need to accomplish going forward. And that's what this retreat will be about. The Vice President will be here at lunch. We'll have Secretary of State Mike Pompeo at dinner. We'll have breakout sessions in between, going through from Russia, China, the new technology, from the environment, from we got household homework ideas, workforce, and others. The members will all be participating throughout, so we're looking forward to building on a very exciting first night of a retreat and growing into a majority as well. So let me stop there, take any questions and comments. I know I missed you yesterday. Go right ahead.
Hey, Mr. Slater, a number of the seats that the Republicans lost in the midterm were not lost on policy, but on tactics such as ballot harvesting and other things. How have the House Republicans sort of tuned up to sort of take advantage of these new tactics going into 2020?
You're correct. There were election law changes. I mean, there's a couple places you want to look. To Maine, they changed the law of how you vote in a federal office. That now you no longer pick one person. There's 2 congressional seats in Maine. Republicans had one of them. You don't vote for one person, you rank them. Bruce Poliquin got the most votes in that election, but is no longer the member of Congress. Because what they did, they dropped the last person, whoever they voted for second, now gets a first vote. Craziest thing I ever heard. In California, they changed the election law that before, a lot of us vote by absentee, I do, that when you voted by absentee, you would fill out the ballot, you'd put it in the envelope, you'd sign the back of it, either you return it or somebody in your immediate family. When it went into the election office, your ballot didn't count yet. What they did, they pulled up your envelope, they looked at your signature, they had certain people in there that had gone to school within handwriting, they pull up your voter registration, they checked to make sure the protection within an election that it was you. Then they opened your ballot. They took that all away. No longer do you have to sign it, and people can come to your door and pick your ballot up, whether it's filled out or not. We found that even in a case like David Valadao, where the day after the election he was ahead by 6 percentage points. 3 weeks later, he had lost by less than 900 votes. Our young Kim, not only did she win on election day, she comes in and starts new member orientation. We find a few weeks later that yes, it changed. Well, the Democrats went about doing it because they kind of control California and changed the course there. Republicans will have to play just as the law says. So we'll have to go out. I don't believe it's healthy for elections where other people are picking up your ballots. But that's what the law in California. We found where we had a supervisor race in Orange County soon after that, which is a very large district, and Republicans actually picked up that seat, so it was strong. I find, and we walked through this yesterday on some of the races that we have going forward. Remember this, you have 31 districts that Democrats currently sit in that Donald Trump carried. 13 of them he carried by more than 6 points. We are swearing in 2 new members next week. We only have to win 19 seats to be the majority. Fewer than the Democrats had won before. Less than 107,000 votes determine whether we're in the minority or the majority. It's much closer than anybody looks at. And when you sit and look at where the economy is today, you listen to Liz give you some of the stats, and Steve, about women working today, about every nationality improvement, one of the best unemployments they ever had. I not only think President Trump is going to carry those 31, but much more. Yes, sir.
The president made some news last night about a middle-class tax cut. Do you have any more details on what the discussions are about that, what it might look like, when you might actually come up with a plan?
The president talked about, and this is something that Kevin Brady has been working on since then too. We've always talked about tax 2.0 and 3.0. How do we continue to keep America competitive? How do we continue to raise the middle class and make them stronger with the challenges for college and others? One of our breakout sessions, we're going to be talking about the cost of college. How do we make college more affordable to individuals? But within the tax code, this is something the president's been near and dear to his heart. The economy, he promised when he became president he would make America stronger, and that's exactly what he's done, and he wants to continue to grow with that. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that none of the candidates last night mentioned impeachment, and then now you talk about the 31 districts. Do you envision suggesting the candidates in those districts, Republican candidates, that they talk about impeachment?
No, because why would you want to impeach the president? The only people, I mentioned that because of the contrast of the House. There was an interesting poll that recently came out. It polled Democratic voters. Democratic voters know more about investigations than they can name one thing this Democrat majority in Congress has accomplished. I think that's a sign that Democrats in Congress have a real problem. The real question would be not the candidates against those 31. What are those 31 going to mention of why they should be reelected? Are they going to say they're going to be reelected because they voted and made Jerry Nadler the chairman because he promised the day after the election he'd be the best person for impeachment? That not only that committee cannot run properly, the leadership doesn't even know what the committee's doing, let alone the conference itself. They can't even determine whether they're working on impeachment or not. It's an embarrassment when I read the headlines coming in. No one can contrast what is happening in that committee. Whereas there's so much a challenge along the border, and he's not going to have a hearing on it. An inspector general investigation of the Judicial Department, and he won't even bring him in to ask him a question of what he found from Horowitz?
Democratic impeachment efforts will be an issue.
The Democrats are making it an issue, and I think it's a wrong issue for them to even talk about. Yes?
You had a handful of members announce
Anything you guys
retirement,
want to
not going to seek re-election. What do you say to a member who's considering retirement? What's your pitch to get them to stay?
You know what? Each retirement is different, and let me be very frank. I'm not concerned about any retirement. The only retirement I was concerned about is Will Hurd. That's a tough seat. Will Hurd is an exceptional person. Every 2 years, we're going to have people retire on both sides. Susan Davis recently announced retirement. On the Democratic side, I served with her. I will miss Susan Davis as well. Ted Poe 2 years ago was going to retire. I love Ted Poe. I wish all the work that he'd done, been able to say. I never knew this man named Dan Crenshaw, but I got to know him. He's doing an exceptional job. I watched John Shimkus stand up and talk about he's been on the ballot since 1988. There's a time to serve and there's time to go do something else. And he said, you know what? I just don't have 100% to put in to win the majority again. Just in a different time of life. Sensenbrenner, more than 42 years. But not one seat I named outside of Will Hurd am I worried about losing. Now I look at seats that we did lose last time. Let's look at Houston. This is George Bush 41 seat. I met this guy named Wesley Hunt. Don't know if you looked at Wesley Hunt. Wesley Hunt is a graduate of West Point. He's not the only person in his family to graduate West Point. His sister graduated 10 years before him. His brother graduated 1 year after him. He flew Apaches. Now he's working at Perry Homes. He's married, has his first daughter. He says, you know, I fought for freedom in other parts of the world, but now I think I have to make sure I defend them right here at home. He entered the race. We recently did a poll. He's actually in the lead. Look at Young Kim, born in South Korea, representing this area in the state assembly, won last time, but lo and behold, they changed the rules and only got to new member orientation. Outraised her opponent. You look at poll, she's in the lead. Numerous points after the other. The one thing that happens, if you want to continue to be able to be the very best, new individuals with new ideas and new energy is what really we need. And so I thank those who have served their country. They will continue to be our friends. They will continue to serve their country as well, just in another capacity. Yes, sir.
Mr. Wood, thank you. The president didn't say a whole lot about guns and the Second Amendment last night. They spent a lot of time in the White House yesterday discussing that. Two-part question. Number one, when do you expect him to make his feelings on this, what should be done, known? And second part question, you watched the debate last night. You saw Beto O'Rourke stand up and say, you know what, heck yes, we are going to take your AR-15s and AK.
He said it in a different manner than you, yes.
I'm sorry?
He used other words than you, but yes.
Yes. Just your reaction to that, and what are the ramifications of at least some Democrats embracing the mandatory buyback concept?
I don't know that O'Rourke said about buyback. He said he was just going to take them from people. And I think he used different language than most people use. I think it shows the contrast there. A president who looks at a problem and tries to find a solution. When you look at the NIC fix or removing the bump stock that the Obama administration put in, trying to solve those problems. The president is getting all the information from law enforcement, from the legal community, from Barr and others. He's meeting with members on both sides of the aisle, and I expect he'll come forward with a package quite soon. But he wants to gather all the information first and make sure whatever we move forward solves a problem, that none of this happens again. Yes? Please.
I was wondering if you might be able to weigh in on Twitter feud you've had with Rand Paul, and whether you've spoken with him since that all kind of.
Well, I enjoyed it. I thought it was an enlightening exchange. Here I had been thinking the Senate is dull. But no, look, I think there are key issues at the heart of that disagreement. And those are really important issues for us to be debating, for us to be discussing. There are issues that surround whether or not you put America first, as President Trump does, or blame America first, as Rand Paul does and has for years. And I think if you go back and you look at Senator Paul's record, he has blamed America, among other things, for World War II. So, you have a situation where he ran on his own in 2016. He only managed to get 4.5% of the vote in the Iowa caucuses and had to drop out. American people, Republicans in particular, are not isolationists. We know very clearly that America is not to blame, that we have to make sure that we're very clear-eyed about our enemies and clear-eyed about what it takes to defend the nation. One of the most important things this president has done since he's been in office is devote the resources we need to rebuild our military, an effort that Senator Paul has not supported. So, look, I think, as I said, it was an enlightening exchange of views. I enjoyed it, and there are very important issues at the heart of it.
More questions? Yes.
I just wanted to know what he wants to run on for 2020. I know you talked about the Democrats and stuff, but I wanted to know more about what you're about what he wants to accomplish.
There's a number of things we hope to accomplish. We hope to build on what we have started before, continue to build a stronger America, a stronger economy. There's challenges that we didn't get fixed. We want to fix immigration. We have a problem along our border, and there's a great contrast, because when you run, there are a power of ideas. One wants a borderless border when you go down. When I look at where the Democrats are offering, then let's talk about health care. First thing we want to do is protect pre-existing conditions, but we want to lower the cost of health care and raise the quality at the same time. I look at what the Democrats are offering, Medicare for all. They want to end health care for more than 180 million Americans for their health insurance themselves. I look to a place that we want to make sure we protect the environment. I look at the contrast between the Green New Deal that lowers the economic life of all Americans, the contrast that we want to do. California wants to remove a plastic straw. We want to move plastic from the ocean. 90% of all the plastic that goes into the ocean today comes from 10 rivers in the world, and not one of them's in America. But we can still do something about it because this ocean is an entire world. You'll watch an introduction of a bill we're recently doing. You look at the extraction of CO2. Everybody's concerned about CO2. A UK company on a very small scale can extract CO2, actually use it in the production of energy. We're building this on a small basis, on a larger basis down in Texas. Bill Gates, Chevron, Oxy are all involved. Dan Crenshaw has a bill that actually enhances the ability to extract CO2. It's stuck in committee simply because Dan Crenshaw happens to be a Republican. I hope we're not running on the idea that we have to pass USMCA a year and a half from now. This is something that we should do this month. When I find that it would only make America stronger, at the minimum, 180,000 Americans more would have a job today if this was passed. We watch Mexico already ratified, Canada's sitting and waiting. When I look at the cost of college, why does college have to cost so much? What's the return on the investment? When I look at colleges like Purdue, where they have kept the tuition low, but increased the number of graduates. They've actually looked at it outside the box. It's one of the things we'll talk about today, where the college itself has skin in the game. It makes sure that you're going to get an education, that it'll take a small percentage of what you're able to make to pay for your college in a short time frame. So the college actually wants to make sure you have a job when you walk out. We look at workforce, the challenges in the 21st century to actually find the employees and the training to be here. That's another one of our breakouts. Then when I look at everybody's way of life, privacy itself. What's happening when it comes to the internet and what somebody's gathering about you? I believe in private properties. I also believe your privacy is a private property. So these internet companies, we should know exactly what they're extracting from us. If they want to monetize it, we should get a piece of it. We should be able to move our own data, and we should be able to delete our own data. I want to make sure there's competition in this world, that not a few companies are controlling that. There is a long basis of ideas, and one of the main items that we're doing is making sure this country is able to defend itself. We've watched in the Obama administration the destruction of our military. You've watched since we've been in to rebuild our military, to make sure our planes can fly, to make sure our men and women are well trained and safe. We'll continue to do that as well, because when America leads, the world is safer. I also believe in pure leadership. When anyone in the world stands for freedom, we stand with them. And that includes in Hong Kong. From the same time in the 1980s when we stood with the shipyard workers in Poland. Those are a few contrasts of what I see happening in Congress today. I don't see legislation being passed. I don't see problems being solved. We have a surprise billing problem where individuals go to a hospital that is in their network, have a procedure, then find out that doctor is not in the network themselves and get some surprise bill. Why is that not solved? I watch prescription drug prices continue to rise. For the first time with this administration, we've been able to lower them than the last year. But the other thing that I found, that we were able to pass 3 bills on the floor this year. Bipartisan, 100% coming out of the committee. But what did the Speaker of the House do? She put a poison pill in so it would never become law. I am frustrated with the idea of the way Congress is being run, that no problem can be solved. That is what's wrong. We can find that we can work with anyone who's willing to work with us to make sure America is stronger. I'll be less concerned with the idea of where the Speaker is today. She's more concerned about tearing down this president than building up America. So if you want to know what we'll run on, it will put America first. We will make it stronger. We'll make it prosperous. And we'll make it for everyone, not just those who philosophically agree with us. Yes, ma'am. We're done? Thank you so much.
I just wanted to follow up on something you mentioned yesterday. You said your first priority is Republicans to get forward with the address that you said.
Yes.
Why do Americans believe that that will actually be a priority this after you control Congress and the White House, and there hasn't really
Well, the first thing I would look at, what did we do when we were in the majority in the House? When we took the majority in the House, the first thing that happened was Nancy Pelosi gave that gavel to John Boehner. We have 12 appropriation bills. The power we have is over discretionary funding. Mandatory funding, which is the real rise in the spending, goes on even when government shuts down. When I had to hold and give that gavel back to Nancy Pelosi, those 8 years later, what we spent on discretionary funding was less than when she handed it to us today, that more than 8 years ago. So yes, what we had power over, we controlled. What we passed was a budget that balanced in 10 years. The Democrats took the majority. They won't even produce a budget. How are you ever going to take control of your spending if you won't produce a budget? It takes 60 votes in the Senate. When it came to entitlement reform, to make sure we would protect these entitlements for a future generation, we passed a budget that did that. That made sure a future generation Social Security would be there for them. Medicare would be there for them. I watched the Democrats with Medicare for All bankrupt Medicare. More than half of all the Democrats in Congress today have co-sponsored that bill. So not only am I fearful that the debt is out of control, because every society has collapsed when they've overextended themselves, I've watched the Democrats expand it further. But I watched Republicans, when they were in the majority, what they had control over in discretionary spending, actually spend less in 8 years than what the Democrats spent 8 years before. If we are given the majority and the opportunity one more time, our promise will be we will not allow the Democrats to stop us again. We came one vote short in the Senate from entitlement reform. We'll have the ability with the Republican Senate and with President Trump to change it once for all and make America strong.